Domestic Draft Podcast. I'm Evan Bierman here with Dan Slowick. Today on the show, it's going to be Beers and Bears. We're going to be talking about the NFL draft. We got a special guest coming on with us, but Dan, I see you pouring something up. What are you drinking?
I got a gift from my brother Mike when I was home for Christmas. He's a big beer guy. He's into the craft, like trading bottles and whatnot and collecting. He got me the bourbon. Oh, I could smell it. He got me the Bourbon County Reserve 30th anniversary for Goose Island, the Bourbon County Stout series. And if you are into just like collecting beers and bottles that are cool and cool packaging, this thing came in like 3 packages. It was almost like it was a beer already on display, like in a museum. Little like hidden logos and things all over the place. It's kind of one of the coolest looking beers I've ever drank. It's got like a tag. It's almost like if you're a sneakerhead and you buy the shoe in the box and it's all cool like that. This is kind of for you. It's a collector's item. I'm going to drink it, but it's the Bourbon County brand 30th anniversary stout. Like I said, it's 14.5%. So we'll see if I make it to the end of the show. It got ranked 4.5 on Untapped. And if you don't know about Bourbon County Stout, I'm going to kind of read off their website what they got for this 30th anniversary. But the short of it is basically Goose Island got together with Jim Beam, some distillers over there and the owners of Goose Island, after the 1000th batch of Goose Island. And they came up with this idea over cigars to kind of use their barrels to age some of their stouts. So that's like the skinny of the story. This 30th anniversary stout pays homage to a serendipitous union between Greg Hall and Booker No that led to subsequent years of variant traditions, from Black Friday lines, like my brother used to go with his friends and wait in those lines, right? To kind of going out and trading these beers, to like neighborhood parties and hosting these kind of like shares. Each of the remarkable bourbon barrels offers characteristics unique to each bourbon's distinct nuances. They are then blended together for complex and balanced expression that celebrates the heritage and legacy of both brands. And as history would have it, Jim Beam launched their first ever small batch bourbon collection 30 years ago. And this is the 30th anniversary reserve stout. It's a culmination of signifying the historical groundbreaking shifts in both the bourbon and beer industries from 2 visionaries all those years ago. Both the concept of the small batch bourbons and the bourbon barrel aged beers have changed our respective drinking communities forever. And the 30th anniversary stout is a celebration of all the people that have enjoyed, worked on, been a part of Bourbon County Stout for the years. I don't even feel like I'm qualified to drink this beer right now. It seems like a little over my head, but I'm going to drink it, let you know how I could smell it as soon as I poured it. You could smell like the bourbon, the oak, the kind of the barrel smell. It smells like I poured myself a glass of bourbon, but it's a beer. So I'm going to drink this and you can kind of start talking about what you got.
Solid. Yeah, I have Anti-Hero here. And if you're from Chicago or anywhere around the area, you know what Anti-Hero. It's a flagship IPA of Revolution Brewing based out of Chicago, Illinois. It's 6.7%. It's a 3.82 on Untapped. And I actually have a 19.2 ouncer here they can pick up at most liquor stores. But, you probably know Revolution Brewing. So I'm going to tell you about the story of Anti-Hero. Revolution opened their doors back in 2010, and Anti-Hero actually wasn't around at the opening. You might think it has been with them from the start, but they only had 4 beers on tap at the time: Working Man Mild, Cross of Gold, Iron Fist, and Eugene. The first batch of Anti-Hero was the 5th beer brewed at the brew pub, and it wasn't quite ready to serve on opening day. They were still working on that. Anti-Hero showed up on draft within days of opening, though, and represented the experience and vision of brewmaster Jim Seaback. And it was initially served in a tulip, actually, to look a little fancy, and quickly became one of their best sellers. So Anti-Hero has been around. It's been a staple of Chicago beer for 12 years now and continues to be amongst the best sellers in the area. And today on the show, we have Chicago's own Anti-Hero joining us. It is, I saw your eyebrow perk up there. Jacob Infante is joining us again. We're so happy to have Jacob rejoining the podcast here. He is on Twitter at Jacob Infante24. He's the lead NFL draft analyst and Bears writer for Windy City Gridiron. Jacob, thanks so much for coming back on.
Of course, guys, appreciate you having me on. Anti-Hero, that's one I haven't heard before, honestly. I mean,
really?
I'm kind of digging it, but that
We'll stick with it.
I'll take that title with open arms.
The Anti-Hero of Chicago.
Nobody on Twitter has hit you up with that. All right, before we get started here, Jacob, can you finish this sentence for us in relation to the Bears? Well, that season sucked.
You know the answer.
Yeah.
I love it. And you're not cooking anything this time that you're coming on the show as well? Okay. Love it.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
So we want to go heavy on the Bears here. I mean, you're the guy to answer these questions for us. You know, the big news, the Bears got the number 1 pick. This season has been so tough to watch. I think just losing left and right, close games, but we have seen a lot of good from Justin Fields, and now we have the number 1 pick. What do you think we do with this? Right off the bat here, that's going to be the question we're going to hit you with. And does it make Ryan Poles' job easier or harder with the number 1 pick?
Truthfully, I think the Bears take the first pick and they trade back with it.
Mhm.
With what team, I'm not 100% sure. Exactly what they get, I'm not 100% sure. But I do think that they trade back from the first pick. I think that, especially now with Houston being at the 2nd overall spot, sure, they could get a quarterback, but if you want the top quarterback in the draft, whoever that may be on your board, for me, it's Bryce Young. I think he's going to be the first quarterback to go off the board, but you're going to have to go through Chicago to get that pick. And the Bears have all the leverage in that. I mean, realistically, they're not going to take a quarterback as much as, what other people are trying to float around these last couple days. But Houston's going to take a quarterback, and who knows who that's going to be. If they have Bryce Young way higher than CJ Stroud, Will Levis, whatever, then I could see Houston moving up. I could see Indy moving up. If they have the quarterback significantly higher than the other guys, then they could try and get the QB1, because at least in my mind, if you're taking a quarterback in round 1, you shouldn't settle. That's just my belief. And unless there's something like, okay, the first overall pick, the team needs a quarterback, like the Jaguars taking Trevor Lawrence. Everybody knew that was going to happen. Nobody was expecting that Lawrence was going to fall. So you look for, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Trey Lance. Those are the guys you spend a lot of your homework on. But now it's wide open because the Bears are open to trading down. They don't need a quarterback. So it's just a matter of getting ahead of Houston. In some cases, maybe getting ahead of Indianapolis and going to secure your guy. So I think the Bears move back. Ryan Poles has shown in his first draft that he, it was with day 3 picks, but he likes having a stockpile of picks. He loves having a lot of draft capital to work with, which I agree with. And with that in mind, I think it makes his job a little easier, but it also puts more pressure on, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a career. Like, this is what Ryan Poles is going to get judged on probably for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
He's wiped this team blank slate, as much cap room as possible, and the number 1 pick falls in his lap. Looking at this, do you think is he going to make any drastic moves? Have it be coaching staff? I know you said he's not going to draft a quarterback. We're going to have faith in Justin Fields. He's the guy, but do you see him building up maybe for next year and looking forward to Caleb Williams and getting some picks next year and maybe trying to get that done? I mean, you're hired to make these decisions. He's got a complete blank slate. This never really happens in the NFL. He's got as much money as he could possibly have. He's got the number 1 overall pick. Everything's at his kind of fingertips. Is he firing the coaches? Are we going to get a Harbaugh, Sean Payton? Are we getting as many draft picks as possible to look down the road? Or are we building from what we have now?
Yeah, so I don't think there's going to be much change in the coaching staff this year. I think that, everyone knows that this is going to be a process rather. This isn't like a Denver sort of situation where you're expected to compete right away and you fall completely short. This Bears team wasn't built to compete in 2022. Let's just face it, looking at what they've invested, all the dead cap that they were willing to eat, and just realistically, it's the first year of a new regime. They weren't ready to compete for a playoff spot. That was blatantly obvious, at least in my mind, since like May or June, honestly. And we saw, finishing with the worst record in the league, that happened to be the case. But I don't think that should come as a surprise. I don't think that's fireable at this point. I do think that the Bears will stock up on future draft capital, but I think that's just more for versatility than anything. I think as much as the Bears I believe won't draft a quarterback in round 1 this year. I could see the argument where if Justin Fields doesn't improve as a passer next year, assuming that the Bears bring in, more offensive linemen, they bring in another good weapon or two and they build a defense around him and Fields still looks the same and doesn't improve, then yes, I could see Caleb Williams being a possibility because of one, how good he's been at USC,
Mm-hmm.
and two, just generally, if your quarterback isn't developing and he's had 3 years of not so great passing performances, then you could start to make the argument there. But this year, I think that Fields did improve compared to last year. I think, especially as a runner, the steps that he took were tremendous. And a playmaker of his caliber isn't someone you just have riding the bench, and he's not someone you're looking to move on from this early.
Yeah.
And even as a passer, I saw, signs of improvement. I think that when he had a clean pocket to work with, which wasn't super often, mind you, but I think his pocket presence did look a bit better this year than it was last year. I think, more of the sacks are just, okay, he can work on his ability to, know when to get the ball off, or just the offensive line didn't give him enough time for the play to develop. I think that in terms of moving around in the pocket and sensing pressure, Fields was better. So I mean, he's improved as a passer, but it's just an extent of how much can he improve in 2023. I believe that given his work ethic, given the flashes we've seen, given his physical talents and resources the Bears have this offseason, I expect him to develop. I expect him to prove the naysayers wrong, to at least improve a decent amount as a passer. Maybe not like a top 5 guy in 2023, but a good quarterback, not just, a good athlete, a good, playmaker, but a good specific quarterback. That's what I think he'll do. But if that isn't the case, then 2024, you trade back, you get some extra draft capital. You can use that capital to
Move up
potentially,
and
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
All right, so
It's such a, this doesn't happen. You don't get a number 1 overall pick, a clean slate of a roster. Okay, you got the quarterback. Like I think I want more. I want a big splash. Fire Eberflus, get a big time name. We haven't won a Super Bowl since '85. Like, this is your shot to go all in almost as well. That's where I'm at.
I didn't see enough bad from Eberflus, to Jacob's point, to think that you should fire him. But
Yeah,
my
I didn't see
biggest
enough
question,
good from it either.
yeah, my biggest
It was
question, I think, is are we
coach.
looking to next year as the year that we compete, or the year after that? There's so many holes in this roster. There's so many unknowns with where this team's going to be. There's going to be a lot of, there's going to be no chemistry with what, the lot players they're going to bring in.
It's a quick league to turn around, though.
My question is, yeah, there are teams that have done it, the Bengals being the biggest one that people want to bring up. So there's people out there saying, go get DeAndre Hopkins. He's going to be 31. Go get Devontae Adams. I think he's going to be 31 as well. So both on the wrong side of 30, both excellent players and would both help any team, I think, at this point. But 2 years from now, are they going to still be in the league? Who knows? My question is, do you go get a player like that and give up draft capital, or do you stay with a young core and try and build and look for maybe 2 years out, get more, trade back, like you said, get draft capital for 2024, and you build the team and look towards 2024 as the year that you compete? What do you think, Jacob?
So the way I see it, with how much overhaul this Bears roster needs right now, competing, genuinely being a Super Bowl contender in 2023 is unrealistic.
Yeah,
That's just the way I see it. I think that there's definitely room for turnaround. I think they'll improve at a lot of different positions with how much money they have in free agency and how much draft capital they have. But I think it's unrealistic to assume that all of those needs will be filled in just one offseason. I think it's just a massive work in progress. And I think that, especially what we saw in week 18, just this past Sunday against the Vikings, that showed that, with a lot of starters going down with injury, just looking at the players they had starting and taking on significant reps, not a lot of them are going to be on the roster next year. And even if they are, they're going to be realistically practice squad guys or game day inactives. And they were taking significant roles on this team. So it's not just the starting lineup, but it's the depth that needs a lot of work at several different positions. So with that in mind, though, I think that, and I tweeted this out pretty recently, that I think 2023 is the year that you compete for the playoffs. You're pushing for a wild card spot because, I mean, the Vikings are coming off, they're having a very good record. I don't know if that exact level of win percentage is sustainable, but I do think they're a good team, and I think they'll, at least contend for the playoffs again next year. And I think the Lions have shown a lot of promise. I think they're a playoff team next year. So, and then the Packers, as long as Aaron Rodgers is there, they'll be in the conversation. So I don't think the North is theirs in 2023, but 24, I think you have a serious shot if Fields develops the way that, the team is likely expecting him to, the way that many fans expect him to, then I think that's when you make a Super Bowl push. So to answer that with, do they go after DeAndre Hopkins? Do they go after Devontae Adams, which I don't know how feasible that is right now, but if they restructure some things with his contract in Vegas, then maybe. I think Mike Evans potentially is a trade target, especially if Tom Brady leaves Tampa Bay.
Michael Pittman,
I could see. That depends on how much the Colts value draft capital to surround with young guys around their new quarterback, or if they'd rather have the proven receiver. I don't know, but he's another name that, trade rumors will be brought out. I'd say yes to trading a wide receiver there, just because sure, you're not expected to be a Super Bowl team, but you're probably expecting players of the caliber of DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams to still be playing at a high level within the next year or two. And I haven't seen anything from either of them that indicates otherwise. Devontae Adams was very good in, a lackluster Raiders situation this year. And DeAndre Hopkins, once he came back from suspension, was very good. So I'd go for either of those guys. And Mike Evans has been super reliable his entire career. Michael Pittman's on the up and up. I think he could, really thrive in maybe a different situation. So
let's put it this way. Let's put on your Cole Haans, your khaki, and your blazer, your Ryan Poles. It's your job. This draft is coming up. Like, I want to know what you think is not, like, there's crazy message boards. Like, let's get like 3 first-round picks and like 2 starters. Like, what are you like? What's your ideal return? Because you even said yourself, you're trading back, you're getting picks. You're probably going to want a player as well with those picks. Like, you're the GM of the Chicago Bears. Who are you targeting? What team are you listening to? And what's your like ideal realistic trade scenario that Bears fans right now can kind of get excited about and start putting their chips on this bet happening?
So I think that the most likely just trade in general, not just with draft picks, but also, including players is, if the Bears are going to move down, I think it's going to be with the Colts at 4. I think that just makes too much sense for both sides. Indianapolis gets the chance to jump a division rival to get whoever the QB1 is on their board to make, 100% sure they get their guy. Chicago gets to move back. They can still stay in the top 4. They can decide, do we want to, double dip and trade back again from there, or get at least one of Jalen Carter or Will Anderson guaranteed to be on the board, basically. So if not both, because you never know if the Cardinals are going to trade back too, depending on who likes, Will Levis enough, or if CJ Stroud is the QB3 in this class. So I think that you're looking at, if you're moving from 1 to 4, I recently highlighted in my most recent mock draft. So you move from 1 to 4, you're getting a 2nd round pick this year, a 1st round pick next year in 2024. And I had a 2024 2nd as well. Whether that part happens, I'm not so sure. I think that's just going to matter in terms of how much the market is, heating up for the number 1 pick. I think that just because of the nature of the beast, because quarterbacks are involved and because it's the top pick in the draft, I think the Bears are, from a data perspective, they're going to have a favorable return that, trade charts might not value as an even split. And the Bears will end up, getting a much more favorable haul from a numbers perspective. But that's what teams are going to have to do, because I think a lot of teams are going to be willing to move up for that number 1 overall pick. They're going to be willing to get that, quarterback, whoever it is they want. So that's just going to push the price up. So I'd say a first next year, and then a second this year, and a second next year, in addition to number 4. I think that's possible. And
no players attached to that.
I feel like if there's one player that I could see getting attached, it would be DeForest Buckner.
Mhm.
I think that if that were the case, then the draft capital would probably decrease a little bit. I think you're still looking at a first rounder next year, probably a second this year too, but that 2024 second is, likely going down in value. I don't know to what extent personally, because I'll admit that identifying, trade value in terms of draft picks to proven players, that's not my strong suit by any means. But I do, expect that if you're including Buckner, even with his contract, I think that you're moving that down maybe to like a 4th or a 5th in 2024, or, push it back to another day 3 pick this year. I don't know. That's just my opinion on it. I could be off base on that. I don't know how other teams value Buckner, if they think the Colts are just going to cut him outright or what to save money. But I think if any player were to be involved in a Bears Colts trade back, it'd probably be Buckner, just simply because, that's Eberflus's guy.
Yeah.
He had so much success in Indianapolis, and he's it's a seamless scheme fit. It's a very good player at the most important position in that defense. I think that would, I think it certainly wouldn't hurt Ryan Poles to, bring Buckner up in trade talks.
Doesn't get me super excited, but I'm sure it's a fit kind of trade. Like, it makes sense for the Bears on that one.
Yeah, no, 100%. And
a lot of people pulling for Marvin Harrison next year, right? And so with that in mind, the odds of us getting him, who knows? But in this scenario that you're describing, it's really, let's move back. Let's draft one of these top defensive linemen.
Is that what we're doing? Defensive lineman? Get that nose tackle?
That's
Jalen Carter.
An edge rusher, right? We need somebody that can get to the quarterback. And then identifying a wide receiver, it seems like in a trade, because free agency, there really isn't anything out there. Allen Lazard might be the best free agent wide receiver, and that's not moving the needle, I don't think, for anybody. So maybe we're turning the page to hope for Marvin Harrison the next year, moving back, getting some draft capital for 2024. It's interesting. You wrote that article today. Again, check it out on windycitygridiron.com. Highlighting 6 potential trades. There's a lot of interesting ones on there. The Colts one definitely piqued my interest, but there was a couple other teams there that are looking for quarterbacks too. Seahawks at 5, Raiders at 7, Titans at 11, Jets at 13. I can see the Jets giving up a lot to move up because they are in dire need of a quarterback.
Jets.
That one really piqued my interest. What do you think we could get from the Jets?
So I think if you're looking to trade with the Jets, it's moving from number 1 to the number 13 overall pick. So that's going to be a haul. I mean, as we've seen with looking back at what I think it was the Titans. Yeah, the Titans moving back from the number 1 spot back in 2016 so the Rams could get Jared Goff. The Titans got a haul for that. And I think that the haul that the Bears could get is only going to be even bigger than that, just because of how, draft picks evaluating, exactly how much those are worth. I think that draft picks generally have become more important over the years to NFL teams. So if you're moving from 1 to 13, you're absolutely getting a first round pick next year. I think a second rounder this year is reasonable. I had a 2024 rather, second round pick, and there's another pick, 2025 third round pick that I added, but I also included Quinnen Williams, the defensive tackle.
Yeah. Give me him.
And I think that goes to, similar point to Buckner, just a quality interior defensive lineman, as a 3 technique defensive tackle. Just a, fantastic talent. He had the best year of his career this year.
Second year, right? Like young too, right?
He's a young guy. I think so. This was his 4th year. This
Oh,
is his
shit,
4th
okay.
year, but he's still very young, because I know he entered as a
12
as a-
sacks this year, though.
as an underclass. Yeah. So he's going to be heading into his 5th year option, and the Jets are going to have to pay him. Whether or not they'll do that, remains to be seen. I think it's a matter of you either get a quarterback this year or you don't, and then you end up, you extend Quinn and Williams. But if the Jets are moving up, then I don't necessarily know if they'd be able to keep Quinn in 2. And I think there's, certainly a possibility they do both. I haven't looked at the Jets salary cap situation, but again, Williams, from, a data perspective, was one of, if not the best defensive tackles in the league this year. So he's only 25. He's still got the best of his career ahead of him. I think you definitely include that. If you're moving back that far in the first round, then again, a blue chip player at a very important position of need. I think that's something the Bears would be willing to ask for. And I think that's something the Jets might have to be willing to fork up if they want the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah. And we got tons of money to pay him. I'm all for that.
Yeah,
for
so
sure.
say we move back, we stay in the top 5. And I know, like, if you follow Jacob's work, if you follow him over at the Windy City Gridiron, this guy is always just looking at prospects. He's diving deep in the tape. He's constantly, he's already got his mock 2025 draft up. Go ahead and follow him. If the Bears stay in the top 5, who's the best talent? Who are we taking? It's not a quarterback. We're looking at lineman, defensive, offensive, maybe a skill position. Who do you see the Bears, if we stay in that kind of top 5 area, who do you see them zeroing in on?
So I think that if you move back, I think if one of Will Anderson or Jalen Carter's available, you take them. I think Will Anderson's not just the top edge rusher in this class, not just the top defender in this class. I think he's the top player in this class. So if he's available, I think you run to the podium and take him. If not, I know some people soured on him because his game against Ohio State wasn't great. I still think Jalen Carter's a fantastic talent. I think that when he's been on the field the last 2 years, his overall tape and the production that he's had, maybe not from sacks, but from a pressures perspective, from a quarterback hits perspective, from an analytics perspective, he's one of the best defenders in the nation. So I'll take that sample size of, about 20 games of very good tape over 1 game of not so great tape. So I'd take Jalen Carter. If you're moving back and both those guys are off the board, then I still think there's plenty of talent they could pursue. Tyree Wilson, the edge rusher from Texas Tech, is a guy I really like. I think that every time I watch him, he's closed the gap a little bit more between him and Will Anderson. And I think Anderson's, going to stay as my top edge rusher, my top defender. I don't think that's going to change. But, that goes to show how good I think Tyree Wilson's been when I've watched him. Miles Murphy, the edge from Clemson, is another guy I think they could target in, they stay in like that 6 through 10 range. Brian Brzee, the D tackle from Clemson. You're also looking at, if you go offense, maybe Peter Skoronski, the offensive lineman from Northwestern. Yeah, I think that'd be a very good pick if you move back a little bit. Some solid receivers. I don't know which one would be their wide receiver 1 between Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, or Jackson Smith and Jigba, but I think there's a shot any of them could, realistically develop into a very good player at the next level. So I think those receivers and Skoronski as an offensive lineman, I think those are your best bets on offense. And then the guys on defense I mentioned, I think they'd be in a good spot either way.
Yeah. All right, let's squash this Justin Fields trading Justin Fields debate that's going on with some talking heads on Twitter. What do you say the percent odds are that we actually trade Justin instead of trading the number 1 pick?
He wants to say 0.
5%. Yeah, I was gonna say 0 seems like, but 5%. Okay, so there's a world where this could take place, but not likely.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say 0. I move it to 5 just because, okay, if something absolutely massive comes up, then sure, I guess you have the number 1 pick. You could consider all avenues, but I mean, teams study quarterbacks regardless. Even if, like, say, if you're the Jaguars last year, you have the number 1 pick. They did their homework on quarterbacks. They might not have necessarily looked heavily and heavily considered taking a quarterback there, but you do your homework. That's what an NFL team does. So yes, the Bears will do their homework on quarterbacks, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to pick a quarterback. And having said that, I don't think that saying the Bears will scout quarterbacks in this draft class is a hot take. I also don't think it's something that even needs to be worth mentioning, let alone being pushed in the media the way that it has. It's just the nature.
It's going to be though, right? There's going to be
Yeah,
some of those beat reporters that are like, "Oh, Ryan Poles is out, scouting this quarterback." It's like, and
yeah,
everybody's going to be jumping all over those. So you heard it here first from Jacob. Do not worry if you hear that the Bears are looking at quarterbacks. They have to do that, right?
yeah, exactly. You have to be prepared for anything. And we've already seen Chicago beat writers, writing whole articles and having, radio appearances, podcast appearances, saying that, and they're making it out to be like, oh, it's this big deal, but it's not. It's not a big deal. And truthfully, I don't think it's worth mentioning more than once.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think this is probably you guys are lucky in that this is the only time I'm going to say it publicly that the Bears will look at quarterbacks in the 2023 draft. And I'll only say it once because that doesn't mean anything.
Right. And it's more or less just playing into their favor, right? If it's out there, they're looking at quarterbacks, other teams like, hey, they might do it. We got to go up and trade. I think they're more or less playing the game that way.
Mhm.
There was that video released on Twitter of the new Chicago Bears stadium, new Soldier Field with the new transit system, the new entertainment district. Does that do anything for you? Or do you think
Looked awesome.
Arlington Heights is still going to happen?
So I liked what I saw. I did watch the video and I thought there were a lot of cool additions to it for sure. That said, I wonder if it's too little too late.
Yeah.
Just because one, they've already bought the property. I think that's a telling sign that they're gonna do something. Yeah, just a tad bit. But one, you're looking at, okay, the Bears own the Arlington Heights property. They're making significantly more money if other events happen there, as opposed to they fix Soldier Field, they add all these amenities. That's still owned by the city of Chicago. That's still owned by the Park District. So the Bears organization isn't making nearly enough money on that. And two, it's a matter of transportation and parking. I think that the current situation, at Soldier Field, I mean, you guys have been down, in the city. I'm assuming it's a nightmare traffic down there on game days. It's very tough to get to the stadium. It's very tough to find parking on a consistent basis unless you show up like 5 hours early. And I know that that's something that in Arlington Heights they have to adjust, and I'm sure that that's something they've discussed over the course of deciding what to do here. But when you have a team that owns the property, that owns the stadium, then that's a lot more revenue opportunity for the Chicago Bears. Say they host the Super Bowl there, they host the Final Four, they host, a college, football championship game, bowl game, whatever, concerts, WrestleMania, whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a lot of, revenue, streams, a lot of opportunities to make money. And I think that sure, it might be a little more expensive for the organization to do the Arlington Heights right away, but I think the long-term benefits are definitely worth it. So
Yeah,
as much as I
this
do,
video needed to come out earlier for sure. I mean, they
Yeah.
needed to have this figured out
I mean,
years
and
in
it was good.
advance.
It
It
was
looked
good.
great.
Yeah, I liked the design a lot. I thought they did a really good job with it, but I think the organization's made up its mind.
think I heard it on ESPN radio this afternoon. It was a Hail Mary after the game already ended.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing? Arlington Heights
Yeah.
has happened. Hey, Jacob, you getting sick of talking mock drafts yet?
Not yet.
Not
No.
yet.
Well, you got another
Give it some time.
3.5
No,
months
I'm
to
loving
go,
it.
right?
Yeah, I got a lot of it, so I might as well get used to it. And I'm not sick of it now though. I'm loving posting my own at this point. So just a lot of ideas you can go with.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you coming on, Jacob. Thanks so much for joining us again. He is Jacob Infante. He's on Twitter at Jacob Infante 24. He's the lead NFL draft analyst, Bears writer for Windy City Gridiron. Thanks so much, Jacob.
Of course. Thank you guys.
All right. Thanks again to our guest, Jacob Infante. Again, find him on Twitter at Jacob Infante 24. If you're not following him, he's a great follow, especially if you're a Bears fan.
Yeah. Before we continue, I gotta go ahead and I guess I'm obligated to tell you, congratulations on winning your fantasy football championship in our league.
That's
Your
right.
first ever. You're the
right.
commissioner as well, and you've been commissioning this league for over 10 years.
Yeah, this is year 10. This is
And
actually year 10.
you won it on the 10-year
Yeah.
anniversary.
Hey, there's 10 people in the league. It's my first time winning. You know, the odds are that I would win once in 10 years. So finally did get the win. So
with an
now
asterisk. What?
with the waiver wire Wednesday is a little bit more substantiated, I guess.
Yeah. Add it to your resume.
Add it to the resume. And then I also, you know, I got the little
Oh, he's
ring
wearing
here.
the ring for the
Got
show.
the ring on
This
for the
guy's not
show.
taking it
Yeah.
off.
There it is. I'm not going to
There
take
it
that
is.
off right there. There it is. Check it out.
Dang.
Yeah. Eric Bierman, friend of the show, bought me that ring. So
Congrats.
first year championship. So thanks, man. Appreciate it. So let's do a little fast fact here,
whatever.
and then we'll get out of here. For the first time in 76 years, the Chicago Bears hold the first overall pick in the NFL draft. Can you believe that? This is the first time in 76 years.
And that's kind of why my stance on this is more or less I want blow it up kind of thing. The roster sucks.
Mm-hmm.
You got a quarterback, sure. You got the number 1 overall pick. Completely clear it again. Get the best coach on the market. Get everything set in there. This is never happened. It's almost 100 years since the last time they're the first overall pick. It's over 30 years since we won the Super Bowl. Go out and just get this thing right. That's kind of why I'm in that position of go get one of those go get Harbaugh, go get the Sean Payton, whatever.
I think Sean Payton, though, I hold up with that is I think you'd have to give some compensation to the Saints. I think you'd have to trade them picks to get Sean Payton. And picks are just something that the Bears need right now with how many holes they have in this roster. So I don't know about him. Harbaugh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But
I didn't see. I believe he was a Bear. Midwest guy.
Possible.
I see him wearing that grungy old hat he always wears wherever he goes, the little old Bears logo. Sign him up.
But this is a hard reset for the franchise. Obviously, 76 years since they've held the first overall pick. They got the most cap space. They can sign any free agent they want. They in fact have to spend, I think, the most in free agency ever for a team based on how much money they have on the books for next year. And there's a cap floor that they have to hit, and they're going to have to spend the most money ever. So they're going to set a record for that. So there's a lot of money to be spent, a lot of picks to be had when they trade down. As Jacob said, it's going to be a really, really interesting time the next 3 months with all the speculation. So very excited to be a Bears fan despite the poor season. So that's it for our show today. Thanks again to our guest, Jacob Infante, for joining us. For Dance Look, I'm Evan Bierman. You've been listening to the Domestic Draft Podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to rate the show. You can find us on Twitter at Domestic Draft, on Instagram at Domestic Draft Podcast. Our website is domesticdraft.com. And you can watch the show on YouTube. Just search up Domestic Draft and drop us a sub. Thanks again for listening.
Cheers.